The season 5 episodes of treasured U.S. sitcom Happy Days, entitled Hollywood, Parts 1, 2, and 3, feature a number of wild decisions, the sort of wild decisions that long-running properties tend to make. A change of scenery comes in the form of a trip to the titular Hollywood, where Arthur Fonzarelli has been given the opportunity to audition to, quote, be the next James Dean, which is not how auditions work, but I digress. He loses the role in favor of Richie. The producers fall for Richie's apple pie face, so I guess he can be the next something. Fonzie takes it in good spirits thanks to a new distraction, in the form of a water skiing competition with local show-off and professional pop-up ad, The California Kid, real name Harold. In Hollywood Part 2, Fonz and the California Kid's wet dick measuring competition ends in a tie, but in Part 3, we are treated to a rematch with a twist. What follows is one of the most important moments in the history of American television. This was the first time anyone jumped the shark. The term jumping the shark came to refer to any property which, whether desperate for attention, low on ideas, or simply too ambitious to say no, pushed its characters into far-fetched situations that undermined the world they'd established. There are a plethora of examples of jumping the shark, whether it's Apu's octuplets in The Simpsons, the famous It Was All a Dream twist from season 9 of Dallas, as well as subtypes of shark jumping, like the returning from the grave trope as seen in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, The X-Files, and The Horny Dragon Show. There are related terms like nuking the fridge, which Time magazine defined as to exhaust a Hollywood franchise with disappointing sequels, and an antonym, growing the beard, referring to later seasons of Star Trek Deep Space Nine and Captain Benjamin Sisko's more arresting look, which signaled the show's transition from good to great. But is it even possible for a long-running sitcom to never, ever jump the shark? Even just a little baby shark, do. After all, the demands of comedy writing often call for bigger and more ridiculous situations, and the sitcom format in particular usually requires a reset by the beginning of each new episode. Characters can't grow or change too much, so sitcom writers rely on putting them into bigger and more absurd situations in order to keep things fresh. When characters don't up the stakes every once in a while, it can feel, well, a little stale, a little like Family Guy. Was there ever an enduring sitcom that managed to thread the needle between jumping the shark and staying the same? Let's talk about
Hey baby, I hear the blues are called. Hey baby, I hear the blues are called. Hey baby,
So we're doing an essay about Frasier.
Yes.
Okay. And the challenge is, what phrase most encapsulates Frasier?
Exactly. Sort of like how we got jumping the shark from Happy Days. Like, we need to crystallize the legacy of Frasier with some kind of trope or concept that defines Frasier or its influence on the zeitgeist. Like something that is definitely distinct to Frasier, but like maybe it can also be applied to other contemporary works of media or even like current art or am I making sense here?
So it's like Frasier. A Frasier.
Neil, stop saying that.
Frasier. All right. Well, you have any ideas?
Okay, well, it sounds obvious, but Frasier is the most successful spin-off series of all time, at least for now. The Swords and Sexual Assault show spin-off premieres this August. Centered around Frasier Crane, a second-tier character from the NBC sitcom Cheers, and running for 11 seasons, as many as its predecessor, Frasier won 37 primetime Emmys during its run, a record broken only by The Dragon Lady show that I'll die mad about in 2016. It's been ranked on several greatest TV shows of all time lists, including the British Film Institute's Top 100, TV Guide's Top 50, and the prestigious Channel 4 2006 poll of best sitcoms. A psychiatrist who was originally intended to be Sam Malone, Ted Danson's rival for a 3-episode arc of Cheers before being fleshed out into a series regular, in the pilot of Frasier, Frasier Crane has moved from Boston back to his hometown of Seattle and has abandoned his private practice in favor of a call-in talk radio show. Frasier offers advice over the airwaves to Seattle's emotionally dispossessed, like an audio advice columnist with a PhD. The KACL radio callers were often celebrity voice cameos from a wide range of 1990s A-listers. Mary Tyler Moore, Helen Mirren, Ben Stiller, Stephen King, Jay Leno, and Art Garfunkel were among the dozens of stars to call in for Frasier's advice, like little audio Easter eggs for keen primetime TV viewers. It's a cozy show. Frasier and his brother Niles are wealthy, educated Seattleites who live lives of culture and comfort. The main tension in the series comes from Frasier's cohabitation with his elderly working-class father, Martin, and his messy dating life following an off-screen divorce from his Cheers wife, Lilith. The primary tension driving the B-plot usually comes from Niles Crane's helpless pining for Martin's home healthcare specialist, Daphne Moon. There's also a cute Jack Russell Terrier who does cute dog things. The stakes are low and the aesthetic is bland, intellectual, and tranquil. It's just Frasier, you know? It's something comfortable and familiar, an offshoot of Cheers where everybody knows your name, but with a touch more class. It carries the aesthetics of wit and refinement, even if the jokes themselves are pretty standard baby boomer sitcom fare.
We're 2 minutes in and there's so many wife jokes.
There's so many wife jokes. It's just all wife jokes.
Amazing bulldog action, but...
Oh god, bulldog.
If you thought that the fops were bad in Frasier, wait until you meet the working class people.
The brothers Crane are snobbish, selfish, and elitist, but it's funny, you guys. At least when they're doing foppish rich guy things like going to the opera or being bad at sports. In the world of Frasier, the only real drawbacks to wealth are the ways it impacts your ability to perform masculinity correctly, or the excessive vanity of your off-screen wife.
All I said was, Maris, why the long face? Yes, and now she's on the phone to her chin grinder in Zurich.
Frasier's apartment, which features a view of the Seattle skyline no real apartment in Seattle ever actually had, is situated so high above the rest that Seattle's underclass is virtually invisible to the viewer. We are invited into Frasier's upper-middle-class world, where the only conflict is whether or not Frasier can trick a pretty woman into bed.
I'm so sorry. Oh, good Lord, no!
It's not serious. It's just Frasier. The closest we, the inhabitants of Frasier's world, come to knowing any real hardship are the fleeting glimpses we get into the lives of callers in to Frasier's radio show. And sometimes Frasier even cares about those real hardships, when it's not getting in the way of whatever pretty lady du jour has caught his attention. He's just being Frasier, you know? It's just Frasier. And sometimes he even cares about the pretty lady du jour, when he isn't actively disdainful of her successful career writing benign, if a little specious self-help books, or when he isn't violating her explicit boundaries in order to prove something to his family, or when his ego isn't called into question by the existence, autonomy, or lifestyle of the pretty lady du jour in any way. God, he's such a fucking sleaze. He's so sleazy. I mean, he also cares about Daphne and often treats her with utter disdain and refers to her as the help, even though she's a physical therapist and a home health nurse, which makes her a skilled worker whose job required more training than an overeducated radio DJ.
Fine. I guess I'll just have to make my own tea.
But that's just Frasier. And you know, he's really the clown here, so it's okay. It's okay that our hero is a horny little creep that consistently treats the women in his life like servants or objects and never learns, because we're laughing at him.
Rebecca! I didn't see you standing there. Why don't you just step on over my father?
Some of the time. When we're not laughing with him. You don't have to overthink it. There isn't really much to it. It's just Frasier.
It's just Frasier. We can do better than that.
All right, what have you got?
Oh, baby, I hear the blues are calling. Tossed salad and scrambled eggs. Ew, let's not have that. Let's do a recipe for tossed salad and scrambled tofu. Oh, let's not do that either. No, I'm not going to do any cooking. Let's just talk about Frasier. Let's talk about that theme music. Because you know that music always confused me. Tossed salad and scrambled eggs. What on earth are you talking about, Kelsey Grammer? It's iconic in a postmodern kind of way, but it's a bit weird, isn't it? Well, apparently, composer Bruce Miller was casting about for lyrics to his jazzy number and contacted his friend Darrell Finnessy, who worked on Frasier, and threw back the line, tossed salad and scrambled eggs. Well, Miller seemed a bit confused, but Finnessy explained that these were things that were mixed up, like Frasier's patience. But I don't know what to do with those tossed salad and scrambled eggs. It's a tough business. Gotta deal with those crazies every day. What? Attitudes towards mental health in the 1990s were, as the French would say, fucked.
Barry, listen, I've got to put you on hold.
In a study titled The Public Stigma of Mental Illness, What Do We Think, What Do We Know, What Can We Prove? Data from the 1950s on attitudes towards depression, schizophrenia, drug and alcohol dependency, and so on was compared to data from the 1990s. And although there were naturally improvements, there also weren't. Self-reporting went up, treatment went up, our scope and definition of what constituted illness, what counted as dependency, and what warranted intervention, all of that had become more in line with modern attitudes. But the way people thought about each other, who they'd move next to, who they would work closely with or be comfortable with someone in their family having a relationship with, all that had actually stagnated. Specifically, perceptions of potential violence as a fundamental component of mental illness had not decreased. Rather, if anything, data suggested a significant increase between 1950 and 1996 in spontaneous mentions of danger or violence in response to what is mental illness. And the attitudes towards personal responsibility in the case of mental illness and clinical depression showed that the majority of people in 1998 still thought it was all your parents' fault and you just needed to talk to family and friends. But it was the 90s, man. It was all good. We were maturing. It's a slow process. I'm a genie in a bottle. You gotta make me a latte. It's not like we were having a genocide or a war or anything. Except in Iraq, South America, former Yugoslavia, that was real bad. Bosnia and Croatia and Kosovo and everything. Rwanda, that was awful. Djibouti, Chechnya, Afghanistan, Iraq again, Venezuela. Look, it was the 90s. It was a time of peace. We were getting our shit together. Georgia, Yemen, Nepal, Palestine. Okay, but it wasn't a world war, right? And this is the way that Westerners talk about the 90s. Almost with a kind of postmodern amnesia that global hegemony had arrived sufficiently in the English-speaking world, at least, to rob us of our sense of panic. Francis Fukuyama, the absolute fuckwit, refers to the fall of the Soviet Union in the 90s as the end of history, but a more honest assessment might be that the 90s marked the end of our ability to experience history. The 90s was a testing ground for the kind of dual representation and exploitation that Western art and media would master in the coming decades. Frasier was a show that dealt with mental illness. It represented the world of psychiatry, in the same way that Jerry Springer represents poverty. Equally, when it came to attitudes towards women, Frasier had a strong, powerful, intimidating, and accomplished ex-wife in Lilith. He had an equal in Roz, with her barbed wit and uncompromising self-directed sex drive. But this show hated women.
And last night was no different. You just kept talking and talking and talking, and I guess that mouth of yours just ticked me off so much I just had to have it.
Oh.
Wow.
Chicks.
Remember people used to unironically use the word chick?
Yeah. Chicks.
Maris, the only character on Frasier you never actually see, is the wife of Niles Crane. Always hilariously and conspicuously absent, she is described variously as clingy, vindictive, overbearing, jealous, cold, frightening, addicted to plastic surgery, like the sun but without the warmth, like a bag of flour, as Frasier puts it, bleached, 100% fat-free, and best kept in an airtight container. She represents the pitfalls and ugliness of wealth, vanity, thinness, and being a woman. She is a caveat for the otherwise cozy world of the nouveau riche. And she is the idea of a horrible, overbearing wife, set untethered from the responsibility to an actress's face. Daphne, the charming if ditzy carer for Frasier and Oz's father, is poles apart from the iciness of Maris, but she exists almost exclusively as the quarry for a benevolent stalker storyline, where Niles follows her around like if Pepe Le Pew was a repressed Seattle wanker, and then she inevitably falls in love with the man who has literally videotaped her in her sleep. I'm making a vacation video, something that we can look at years from now, over and over and over again. Roz is...
Look, Dr. Crane, the lines are hot. Really hot.
I feel like Roz is like wish fulfillment girl boss.
Oh, yeah.
Not human being.
Written by men who are like, what if your best friend was a cool girl who liked to fuck?
While Dr. Crane strips, our news station manager would like to know if you prefer to be the spanker or the spankee.
Oh, definitely the spanker.
Well, then hop in the cab! I'm not wearing any pants!
Oh God, is he gonna masturbate in front of his coworker?
First joke in the first episode of Frasier is at the expense of his ex-wife. There's an episode, She's the Boss, where the whole conflict is that the station manager at KACL is a woman, and Frasier defeats her by talking to his callers about their sex lives. At one point, Frasier falls for and has to break up with someone who looks just like his mother and is played by the same actress. Oh yeah, they go for the Oedipal complex and repressed memories and dream interpretation and young, and Frasier is Jordan fucking Peterson. But it was the 90s. It's not like the misogyny was mean-spirited, not like the old 50s black and white hit your wife misogyny.
Shut up!
Oh, yeah, you want to punch in the mouth?
Jesus Christ, Frasier, come on, help me out here, man. We have this sense of naivete and innocence when we look back at the 90s, following in the cocaine-powdered footsteps of the 80s, which had been this innovative time for mass media, the golden age of advertising. The 90s was a continuation of this capitalist creativity. It was young-blooded and influenced by the no-nonsense and disenfranchised attitudes of Generation X, who demanded, in their way, a bit of wokeness. But it also meant that unlike the black and white hit your wife bigotry of previous generations, the 90s would forever be considered fine. And any questions around misogyny, homophobia, racism, ableism, fatphobia, or outright slander and ahistoricism, well, those accusations would remain, to this very day, the sole domain of the humorless killjoy.
I fucking hate Frasier. I hate this show.
It's okay, because this show hates you.
Yeah, I know, sincerely.
When philosopher and Holocaust survivor Hannah Arendt referred to the banality of evil, she was using the example of the Holocaust, of Adolf Eichmann and his fascinating, if disquieting, normalness. Eichmann was a normal, boring, businesslike little man who thought nothing, in a very real sense, of the atrocities he committed as one of the major organizers of the Holocaust. Arendt refers to the cogs in the machine of bureaucracy having a greater role in the acts of true human horror than have, say, psychology or sociology. And so I think, upon consideration, that our Frasier should be the banality of Frasier. For the way misogyny, homophobia, mental health stigma, etc., are reified by the low-hanging fruit of lazy jokes and zero research, but then forgiven and forgotten by virtue of what a fine time we had. It was fine. I remember the bigotry warmly.
I like it. But I think it's too broad. Like, you could probably make an even stronger argument for the banality of Friends or the banality of The Big Bang Theory. Like, it's not uniquely Frasier. Like, cozy, low-stakes sitcoms upholding hegemonic bigotries through lazy jokes is just like all sitcoms.
Okay.
And please stop calling it Frasier. That joke only works when you're watching the video with subtitles.
Sorry.
Okay, I got one for you. You know, Eddie, the Jack Russell Terrier who keeps jumping up on Frasier's very expensive replica of Coco Chanel's sofa to Frasier's great chagrin. Oh yeah, that basic-ass brown leather sofa was a $15,000 replica of the one owned by Coco. Take one accessory off before leaving the house to spy for the Nazis, Chanel. But Eddie, though. We love Eddie. He's so cute and familiar. And the perfect avatar for the cultural amnesia around this shitty fucking show. The show's legacy and aesthetic is a cute dog, bland, haute 90s furniture, nostalgia, coziness, just a touch of middle-class culture and refinement, and an empty sense of comfort and satisfaction. You don't remember the things Frasier said. You remember the way Frasier made you feel. You remember the way the dog made you feel. You remember Eddie. You remember the shape of things, the vague aesthetics of kindness and civility and romance. You remember Niall's unspoken until requited love for Daphne. You remember Martin spitting one-liners from a green beaten armchair. You remember Roz's barbed sarcasm. Can you remember the content of her witty rapport with Frasier in the KACL studio? No. But you can recall the flat musicality of Roz's dry delivery. You remember the dog. You remember Frasier dating a lot of different women. It's relatable. A lot of us cycle through a number of dates before finding the right partner. But do you remember him stuffing his mail into his neighbor's mailbox in order to trick her into coming into his apartment? Do you remember him taking pictures of a woman he was dating while she was sleeping against her explicit wishes because Martin, Niles, and Daphne didn't believe he was dating her? Do you remember Frasier following a random woman who walked past him in the airport to Mexico in order to sleep with her? Or do you remember Eddie? Season 10, Episode 12 of Frasier, titled The Harassed, sees a new financial analyst hired by the KACL station named Julia Wilcox. Julia's arrival at the station is the result of her fall from grace and subsequent firing from CNBC following a scandal after the publication of her controversial book, Day Trade Your Way Out of Debt. Julia is icy, mean, and arrogant, with an alleged litigious streak that makes Kenny Daly, the KACL station manager, apprehensive about taking any action to fire her or address the hostile working environment Julia creates at the station. Naturally, Frasier gets into an argument with Julia and comes on to her, grabbing her by the arms and declaring, "Are you as turned on as I am?" in the heat of the moment. KACL station employees are then forced to attend a sexual harassment seminar where they're compelled to learn how to, quote, build a truly gender-neutral workplace between remarking on the chick at the coffee table having her high beams on and threatening Frasier with physical violence for ruining their weekend. Not for being like a huge creep to a new colleague, just for being a huge creep to the wrong colleague, the one that corporate worried enough about to mandate harassment training.
That's right, I said I love her! Get out. Get out!
It's very clear what the writers think about workplace sexual harassment training. Employees are made to pair up, trading stilted, politically correct comments like, "You're looking professional today," and practice asking colleagues out for, quote, a coffee or non-stimulating beverage. All the while, the men of KACL continue making disgusting, degrading comments about their coworkers, and we're meant to laugh. The episode is resolved when Julia reveals that she doesn't intend to sue the station, and the entire staff abandon the seminar then and there. In the final scene, we see that Julia's icy demeanor has thawed toward Frasier somewhat. You see, the lesson learned was hers, the harassed. The story wasn't about how Frasier, the self-absorbed serial monogamist, needed to self-reflect on the way his perception of women led him to misread a situation so horribly that he assaulted and demeaned one of his coworkers at their place of employment. It was about how Julia needed to lighten the fuck up. 2 years before Frasier's premiere, and fully 10 years before The Harassment, George H.W. Bush nominated Justice Clarence Thomas to the Supreme Court of the United States, following Justice William Brennan's resignation. The initial round of public confirmation hearings for Justice Thomas, led by then-chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee Joe Biden, concluded in September of 1991. On October 6, 1991, a leaked FBI report was aired by NPR Supreme Court correspondent Nina Totenberg, alleging that Justice Thomas had made several unwelcome sexual comments toward a former colleague of his at the Department of Education and the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. University of Oklahoma law professor Anita Hill was called to testify on the alleged instances of harassment, ranging from repeated requests for dates and sexual overtures made toward her by Justice Thomas to graphic descriptions he'd given her of his penis and of bestialic pornography to an infamous incident involving a pubic hair on a Coke can. Anita Hill was made to recount humiliating instances of sexual harassment in front of politicians and cameras again and again. The Democrats on the Judiciary Committee were wary of appearing partisan against the conservative Justice Thomas, so they came down hard on Hill during her testimony. Luckily, that would be the last time Joe Biden would ever throw a vulnerable group under the bus in order to appeal to Republicans. Anita Hill was broadly mocked by media and pop culture.
Shown remarkable courage throughout your testimony. It couldn't have been easy for you, or any of us, to sit here for the last 7 hours and talk about penis size.
People criticized if she was even pretty enough to sexually harass. She was deemed a liar and, quote, a little bit nutty and a little bit slutty. But the confirmation hearings were also one of the first times American women encountered the concept of workplace sexual harassment, giving a name to something that had once been nameless. And having a name, having a term for something, gives you power. You can only understand what can be defined. And that's what this whole video is about, right? Trying to define. On June 24th, 2022, in his concurring opinion following the overturning of landmark Supreme Court case Roe v. Wade, which protected a pregnant person's right to abortion as part of their right to privacy under the 14th Amendment's Due Process Clause, Justice Clarence Thomas, sex pest, stated that SCOTUS, quote, should reconsider all of this court's substantive due process precedents, including Griswold, Lawrence, and Obergefell, referring to past rulings codifying contraception access, same-sex and extramarital relationships, and same-sex marriage. The consequences of our culture's treatment of women and other marginalized people 30 years ago are still being felt today. Those attitudes are not trapped in amber. The people who mocked Anita Hill and accused her of lying and exaggerating may not shoulder the same amount of guilt as the politicians who voted to confirm Justice Thomas, but they're still complicit. The dehumanization of women and other marginalized people does not exist within a vacuum. It is an ongoing and slowly escalating process of normalization and radicalization. Let's get back to remembering Eddie. Remembering the safety, the coziness, the fuzzy taupe-colored sitcom that is Frasier. There is room, is there not, for a little well-meaning, benign sexism here and there, right? There's room for characters to act in ways that real people wouldn't. Like, I'm not one of those humorless SJW feminists who can't take a joke. I don't even mind the penultimate scene in the season 3 finale Odd Man Out, where Frasier rushes to the airport to pick up a woman at the airport who left a voicemail for someone else on his answering machine by mistake, out of some misplaced hope that she might be the one for him. IRL doing something like that would be just cause for a good pepper spraying, but I totally accept it within the realm of the sitcom. The setup for the scene is justified, and Frasier's good-natured response when he finds out that she's happily married is, well, it's another one of our little Eddies. It's the sweet and mature and just a hint sad ending to another low-stakes comedy of errors. It's how we like to remember Frasier. But it isn't Frasier. It's just Eddie. I'm mixing my metaphors, tripping my tropes. So someone I once knew had this thing where he would constantly make misogynistic jokes and sexist comments. And at first, I honestly laughed along because I'm a terrible person. So what's a few derogatory comments among friends? But then the jokes got a little excessive and a little annoying. And it's we get it, you're horny. And then the sincere asides started up about how women don't like short guys, or how I paid other men in our friend group a little bit too much attention. And this was not a former partner of mine, by the way. And then one day he made a misogynistic comment about the body of an actress, kind of out of left field in a completely normal conversation we'd been having. And I just snapped. I really chewed him out. And you know what he said to me? If I had been a character in a TV show, that would have been really funny, though. To him, in his day-to-day life, he'd always been playing the role of the protagonist in a 90s sitcom. And you're supposed to root for the protagonist of the 90s sitcom, even when he's objectifying and belittling the women around him. Maybe even especially when he's objectifying and belittling the women around him. The audience laughter track plays, and we know that it's all fine and cozy.
Get out!
We remember Eddie, but we remember the other things too. Maybe the things we didn't think we remembered. The mean-spirited things and the bigoted things. They're there, behind the cute little dog.
Remembering Eddie. That's perfect. What?
I don't want to remember Frasier this way. It's still too nice. By coining the show a catchphrase that recognizes how the less comfortable aspects of it are swept under the proverbial rug, or under the proverbial Jack Russell Terrier on top of the proverbial $15,000 couch, we're still kind of participating in covering up those discomforting aspects. We're referring to the dog. Why don't we just call it There's Something About Maris, or The Show Fucking Hates Women? Why in 2022, following a media spectacle masquerading as a trial that essentially sounded the death knell of Me Too and multiple coordinated and pretty fucking successful political moves to control women and strip them of their rights in the middle of an actual fucking genocide of trans people, are we still feeling so cozy about the media that made us like this? Why don't we just call it Kelsey Grammer raped a 15-year-old girl in a hotel room in 1993 and a grand jury refused to indict because she waited a year to report? He was 37 years old and he had raped a child multiple times in a hotel room 2 months before Frasier premiered, and it still went on to run for 11 seasons, and he went on to become one of the highest paid television actors of all time. Ah, well, sad for her, but we wouldn't want a talented man's career to be ruined by the consequences of his own fucking actions. I don't want to remember the dog, Neil. I don't want to come up with clever new tropes or make YouTube videos titled Frasier is Garbage and Here's Why. I don't want to do much of anything these days. I'm just tired all the time. And this isn't fun anymore.
Have you ever heard the story of Lupe Velez?
Yeah, it's in the first fucking episode of Frasier. We watched it together. You remember? 1,000 years ago?
Oh, the story they told in Frasier. Because he's feeling sorry for himself about his new life in Seattle not working out the way he thought, having to live with his father and his father's carer. So Roz says, ever heard of Lupe Velez? And proceeds to tell him about a movie star in the 30s whose career hit the skids and her last shot at immortality. She thought if she couldn't be remembered for her movies, she'd be remembered for the way she died. She plans a lavish suicide, candles, silk sheets, white satin gown, full hair and makeup, the works. She takes the overdose of sleeping pills, lays in the bed, and imagines how beautiful she's going to look on the front page of tomorrow's newspaper.
Unfortunately, the pills don't set well with the enchilada combo plate she sadly chose as her last meal. She
Stumbles into the bathroom,
trips and goes
headfirst into the toilet.
And that's how they found her.
Frasier asks if there's a reason she's telling him this story, and Roz says yes. Even though things may not happen like we planned, they can work out anyway. Remind me, says Frasier, how it all worked out for Lupe. Last seen with her head in the toilet. Roz has an answer for this too. All she wanted was to be remembered. Will you ever forget that story?
Why are you telling me this?
Well, that's just it, Hoots. It's all lies. That's not how they found Lupe Velez. She had a pretty tragic life. She came from a wealthy family but witnessed violence and death from a young age, by her father exposing her to the activities of the Mexican Revolution. At the age of 13, she had a 21-year-old boyfriend, which nowadays we have a word for. A word we are not allowed to say on youtube.com. And she was sent off to a convent. She returned home when her father went missing in action, and she had to provide for the family. Lupe was, by all accounts, very beautiful, charismatic, fiery, wild, could be extraordinarily charming and unpredictable, prone to fits of rage and depression. I am not wild, she said, I am just Lupe. Somehow, rising through theater, this extraordinary woman was noticed by Hollywood. She starred alongside Douglas Fairbanks, Laurel and Hardy, and Gary Cooper. They began a relationship that was, I think, a steaming trash fire. She stabbed Cooper and shot at him. When she was in a relationship with Tarzan actor Johnny Weissmuller, he would turn up to set with scratch and bite marks. What can be said of Lupe on the receiving end of violence is less clear. What can be inferred about her mental health in any case is not good. Lupe's death came at the age of 36. She was in a relationship with Austrian actor Harold Rammond. Although it's possible she was unhappy broadly in the relationship, her suicide note seemed to indicate a real unhappiness, one that baffled Rammond. And owing to her mental state and the muddiness of the reporting, we'll just never know. She was 4 months pregnant. She'd been dining that evening with friends. She said, I am getting to the place where the only thing I am afraid of is life itself. She did overdose on sleeping pills, but she died in her bed. Nothing worked out for Lupe. She was sick, she had a hard time, she burned bright, she was hot, and then men decided to lie about her.
There was a slimy book called Hollywood Babylon by a slimy little writer called Kenneth Anger, who claimed his source as mental telepathy mostly, and he created the myth that she ate Mexican food, ran to the toilet, died with her head in the bowl. It was racist, sensationalist, woman-hating garbage, and it is repeated verbatim in the first episode of fucking Frasier.
Neil, I'm already upset. Why are you telling me this?
Because it's true. Because it's this woman's truth, and people like you and I have a responsibility to the truth. To look at the lies and the bullshit and the zero research and the bias and the misogyny and say, no, fuck off. Here's the truth. And that changes the narrative just a little. It doesn't fix patriarchy, but it sets the record straight. And we should be entertainers and tell the truth. No low-hanging fruit, no bullshit. Look, I'm just your friend. And I think you have every right to be angry. I'm Irish. I'm not going to make the bad feelings go away. We need the bad feelings. We need your anger. We need your conviction and energy and commitment to the truth. That's what people like you and I are. Part of the solution. It won't make you feel any better right now. But over the course of a lifetime, I mean, who do you want to be? You want to be Frasier?
Ugh, nobody wants to be Frasier.
That's it! That's it!
We did it!
Nobody wants to be Frasier!
Perfect! Hey everyone, thanks for watching the video. Thanks to Neil from The Liberal Cook for their work on this one. It's always such a joy getting to collaborate with them, and they really put a lot of work into this essay in particular. Special thanks to Jose for giving us the assignment for this video. Absolutely hated rewatching Frasier, so thank you, Jose, for giving me something to get angry about. I love getting angry about things. Also, welcome to any Jose fans that are new to my channel. Stick around, make yourselves cozy. I'm not crying in every video, I promise. And for my subscribers, go watch Jose's video on Frasier. This video is meant to be a companion piece to that video, and I'll link off to that in the description. And finally, I have a special announcement. I have a new podcast out with Mandy from Mainly Mandy and Kaylin Conrad from Kaylin Conrad. It's called Respect the Dead, and it's a weekly history podcast where we make fun of people who are now dead and can't fight back. It's been described by one listener as informative, petty, and entertaining, and another listener gave us 10 out of 10 slurs, so check it out on your favorite podcast app. I'll also include a link with information about it below, along with links to all of the YouTube channels I referenced. For people wondering about when Guns Part 2 is coming out, I really don't know, but I promise I'm still working on it. I had to give myself some space from the topic for a month or so, and I'm slowly working on getting vetted with some organizations. I will likely release another video between that one and this. Thanks again for watching this video, and as always, thank you to my patrons.